Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm bringing you a new releases book haul, although not quite as new as I would hope. I try and do one of these videos like once a month where I'm talking you through the books that I have been sent for review on NetGalley, and I filmed a video and edited a video. It was a really good video. I looked really cute in it to go up at the start of August and I just forgot to upload it. I don't know how I did that, but watching that video now, it doesn't make any sense because so much time has passed. So I'm just doing a bumper August and September NetGalley haul. I'm really bad at keeping up with my NetGalley reviews, and it's something that is such a typical thing to say, but I really should be better at it because I should be more respectful of the work that publishers put in when they're sending me these books for review. I should know that, working in the publishing industry myself. So I'm gonna hold off on requesting things for the next couple of months and try and catch up a bit. Also, you may notice that my background has changed a little bit. I decided to rearrange my entire bedroom like you do when you're 12 years old and you have this epiphany that it's gonna be like, new room, new me. Anyways, into the book. So I have one book that came out back in June that I was sent at the start of August, and that is Pizza Girl by Jean Hyung Fraser. This is a book all about an 18-year-old girl who is pregnant, and she also works in like a pizza shop and she delivers pizzas, and it's about this growing obsession and relationship and complicated friendship she has with one of her customers, and it's a really interesting book. I've already read it, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, look forward to my August wrap up. I had a couple of problems with it, which is a shame because I think it's a fantastic book that was let down by like one little thing. I also have If I Don't Have You by Sarita Domingo. This came out in July. This is a romance novel that is set in New York, and it follows the romantic relationship between an Afro-Brazilian filmmaker and a Black British journalist. I've been getting really into like rom-coms over the past year or so, and it's a very like white dominated genre, and while I'd noticed I was definitely diversifying the voices that I was reading in maybe like YA literature, romance fiction, like rom-coms, was something that I wasn't getting a lot of Black voices from my reading. So we're gonna make a conscious effort to change that. Next I have The Magnificent Sons by Justin Myers, and this book has bi representation, which I am so excited for. In this book we follow 29-year-old Jake, who really seems to have his life together. He has a fantastic job, a really great girlfriend, and then when his younger brother comes out, his younger brother is so accepted and celebrated and is welcomed into a really healthy community. But this leads Jake to examine his own repressed feelings about his sexuality. I think it's gonna be a really interesting perspective. You know, when I've read books that are about bisexual characters, they tend to be women, and I think within portions of the LGBTQ+ community and even within the bi community itself, there's a lot of prejudice against bi men. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. I think it's going to be great. Next I have Not the Type by Camilla Thurlow. You may not know the name Camilla Thurlow, but you may know the name Camilla from Love Island. I'm such a big Love Island fan. I miss it. I'm really missing it from my screens at the moment. Camilla was on the 2017 season, and she's a really interesting person. Like, Camilla is very posh. Like, she's very, very posh. She's very well educated. She spoke about like feminism and human rights on the show, and she was just really a real contrast to some other contestants that were on the show, and it was really great to see a mix of women, and I hope as Love Island continues there will be a mix of different women in lots of different ways, personalities, body types, etc, etc. But Camilla, I think, is a real standout contestant from Love Island. Before she went on Love Island, Camilla's job was to go into like war zones or like former war zones and diffuse landmines. I think this book is just like her memoir and talking about those experiences and like Love Island and after Love Island. I think she's a really interesting person, so I'm really looking forward to reading her book. Next I have Here is the Beehive by Sarah Crossan. Sarah Crossan is normally a YA author, but this is her adult fiction debut. She's probably best well known for her novel One, which I really enjoyed. Here is the Beehive is also told in verse, like her YA fiction is, and that's really interesting. I think seeing things written in verse, it's normally either YA or something super literary, and it's nice to see something in that middle ground. This book is about the grief experienced by a woman in the aftermath of the man she was having an affair with dying. It's about her going through grief and the really difficult and uncomfortable emotions she has. I have also already read this one, so I will leave my full thoughts for my wrap up, but this is also one that I had some difficult feelings on. Next I have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is one that I've seen doing the rounds quite a bit on BookTube, and it sounds so much fun. This is about a man and a woman who are on holiday and and they are both novelists but write in very different genres. I think one of them writes kind of like rom-coms and one of them's more literary, and they decide to swap genres. And of course, a romance blossoms between the two of them. Next I have As You Were by Elaine Feeney. In this novel we follow Sinead, who is a property developer. She's really tough, driven and funny, but she has a secret. It's a secret that nobody knows, and honestly that hook is enough to get me. Like, if you finish any sentence, any description of someone with they have a secret, I'm in. This book is also supposed to be about the darkly present past of modern Ireland, and that's also a hook for me. Next I have A Little London Scandal by Miranda Emerson. This novel is set in London in the 1960s and follows 3 different perspectives. We have Nick, who was a rent boy since the age of 15, whose life is turned upside down by an act of violence and an accusation of murder. We have Anna, who is a dresser in a theatre and is determined to prove that Nick was innocent. And we have Marion, who is the wife of an MP with a tarnished reputation, who wants to prove that her husband wasn't involved. That sounds like so interesting. It sounds like some perspectives that I've never really read from before. I can't really think of many books that I've read that are set in the 60s, and also I'm really missing London at the moment, so maybe that's one way that this book will appeal to me. Next I have Real Men Knit by Kwana Jackson, and this is another book that I hope will diversify some of my rom-com reading. This book follows the romance between Jesse and Kerry. Now Jesse is the son of a woman who has just passed away, and she owned this amazing like knitting shop. He's determined that the shop should stay open, but his brothers don't think he's able to cope with the responsibility and they think they should just sell the shop. That's where Kerry comes in, who has worked at the shop for years and always had a crush on Jesse. This just sounds so cute. I also have Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. You may know Hazel Hayes for being a YouTuber, and I've kind of watched her on and off for a few years, so I was really intrigued to see she had written a novel, and the premise does sound really interesting to me. It is basically like a love story told backwards, so you start with them breaking up and then work your way back to the start, I think. It sounds like a really interesting concept, so I'm intrigued to see what she does with it. Next I have The Last Story of Mina Lee by Nancy Ju Yoon Kim, and this is the story of Mina and Margot, who are a mother and daughter. Mina, who is the mother, is not answering any of Margot's calls, and somehow like subsequently after that, Margot begins to find out more about her mother's life and what happened when she moved from Korea to America to start a new life. It's a book about unspoken secrets, a book about mother and daughter relationships and how those secrets coming out can bond those women together even more. I love books about like family secrets, so I think this one is going to be great. Next I have After the Silence by Louise O'Neill. If you've been around this channel for a while, you may know that Louise O'Neill is my favourite author of all time. I think she's incredible. 5 stars to everything that she's ever written. I adore her. This is her latest novel. It's an adult novel. It's kind of like thriller. This book follows the aftermath of there being a massive party on this kind of remote Irish island. There's a massive storm that cuts the island off from the mainland, and in the morning a body is discovered. 10 years later, a documentary crew comes to the island and tries to discover what happened. In some ways this reminds me of Scenes of a Graphic Nature by Caroline O'Donoghue, which I read earlier this year. You know, remote island off the coast of Ireland, coming back years later to find out what happened. And I loved that book. I love Louise O'Neill, so I think I'm gonna love this book. Next I have Kicking Off by Eve Ainsworth. This is a middle grade book that I am so excited for. As you may know, I'm a massive football fan and I'm a massive champion of women's sport and women's football. And this is a middle grade book that is set in 1917 while Britain is at war. And if you know anything about women's football, you might have heard of the Dick Kerr ladies, who were the most famous women's team possibly of all time. They were hugely popular. Like at the time that the Dick Kerr ladies were playing, women's football was more popular than men's football. I'm just so excited to read this book. I wish this book had existed when I was little. Next I have Just Us, An American Conversation by Claudia Rankine. I've read Claudia Rankine's previous book and I thought it was really interesting, and I loved the different forms that it was told in. I think this book is going to explore some similar themes. I think it's a book about exploring experiences of white supremacy and racism, about political and cultural implications of those kind of things. I think it's going to be a really important and thought-provoking book. Next I have Accidentally in Love by Belinda Misson, and this sounds cheesy as fuck and I am in. In this book we follow Catherine, who in the space of a week quits her job, moves back home and dumps her boyfriend. I am in. But Catherine has a plan. She's gonna open her own art gallery and she's not gonna get distracted by men. Then she meets Kit, a handsome local artist who is stubborn as fuck, and she falls accidentally in love. I think this is gonna be cheesy. I hope she continues to chase her dream of an art gallery even though this man is in the mix. She can do both, but I am in. I also have The Roommate by Rosie Danan, and this also sounds so cheesy. This is about Clara, who is like a goody two-shoes. She's super good. But then she decides to move across the country and share a flat with her childhood crush. When Clara looks up this boy on the internet, Josh, she finds out that Josh has made a little bit of a name for himself. The one thing that Josh and Clara seem to agree on is that women deserve better sex. Yep. Next I have Where the Edge Is by Grania Murphy, and this is quite different in tone. So this is a book that is set in rural Ireland, and it follows what happens when a road subsides, trapping a bus and 5 passengers. The rescue team manages to save 2 people, but as time goes on, this bus sinks further into the hole. I think it follows what happens to the 3 people who are still trapped, but also 3 people on the outside. So Nina, who is the reporter covering the story, Tim, who is the rescue liaison, and Richie, who is the bus driver that was pulled from the wreckage. I feel like this book is just going to be like such high tension. Like, I've never read a book that is anything like that before. Next I have Fire, Burn, Cauldron, Bubble, which is an anthology of poetry selected by Paul Cookson. This poetry is just about magic and witchy things, and it's a collection of poetry from lots of different poets. So it'll be a great way to read some witchy poems from poets that I love, but maybe also discover some new voices as well. I love me a poetry anthology. Next I have What Are Friends For by Lizzie O'Hagan. This is another cheesy romance. So this concept sounds really interesting. So this book is about Eve and Max, who are giving their respective best friends dating advice. And from what I can gather, their best friends then start dating. But it's about that line between like instructing and like imitating. Like basically are Max and Eve kind of dating but through their friends? Do you know what I mean? It does sound like one of those like concepts like The Flat Chair by Beth O'Leary, where it doesn't quite make sense, but you just gotta like suspend your disbelief and enjoy the cheesy romance. Maybe I should do a whole like romance reading vlog. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do that. Next I have How It All Blew Up by Arvin Ahmadi. This is a YA book that is all about a gay Muslim teenager. I have heard some really mixed reviews on this one. Mixed reviews from within the Muslim community. It seems like some people are really criticizing it, some people are really celebrating it. I think it's really important to have representations of intersectional experiences. You know, just because something isn't your experience of being Muslim or isn't your experience of being gay, it doesn't mean that isn't the experience of people in the intersection of those two identities. So I am gonna read this one, but I will be reading it with quite a critical eye and reading some more Own Voices reviews as well. Next I have The Hungry Ghost by H.S. Narup, and this is a middle grade book that sounds like such an interesting concept. So this is an adventure story that follows Freya, who is a Danish girl who has just moved to Singapore with her family. She arrives during the month of the Hungry Ghost, which is said to be a time when ghosts roam the streets and families are supposed to give offering to the spirit to appease their ancestors, and a little girl in a white dress starts to appear to Freya. And when she follows this little girl, Freya begins to unravel her own family secrets. This sounds like such a great adventure story from a perspective that I've never really read from before. I am loving my middle grade this year, so I'm very excited for this one. And there, ow, I just punched the wall. So they are all the books that I have to talk to you about today. Quite a few more books than I expected having in one video, but there we are. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you are interested in reading any of these books. They will all be linked down below in the description if I can find pre-order links for the ones that aren't already out. I will also be leaving a link to my Ko-fi page and also my Amazon wishlist if you would like to support this channel, or you can just support this channel by giving this video a like and leaving me a comment down below and making sure you subscribe. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk to you in my next video.